Hey everybody, it's Barbara. And what do we have here? We have the Inspiring Women series from Barbie, from Mattel. These are the latest in their long standing collection. We have Florence Nightingale, Ella Fitzgerald, and Billie Jean King. And I'm going to do all of these dolls separately, but I wanted to shoot one opening with all three just to say that they were put out together at relatively the same time. They tend to do these in threes. So we are going to start. We're going to try to do this in chronological order, so to speak. And Florence Nightingale was doing her work just about 100 years before Ella Fitzgerald hit her heyday, and then less than a half century later, Billie Jean King made her mark in the sports world. So we are going to look at all three of these lovely ladies. We're going to talk about them historically, and we're probably going to talk about the shitty job Mattel did in terms of giving them their wardrobe. So everybody, hang in there, and let's enjoy the ladies.
So we're going to start here uh, with the back of Florence Nightingale's box. Pioneering nurse and statistician, 1820 to 1910. She lived 90 years of relative, very long life. She lived almost to 100, which was unheard of for the 19th century into the very beginning of the 20th century. Really, you didn't start seeing people living into their 90s until in great numbers, I should say, until like the 80s or 90s. So really, she was unique in that way, especially since, as you'll see in a second, she was not a well woman herself. Not that her interest in nursing came from a desire to heal herself. It came from a desire to do the right thing. Uh, I think part of that also comes from the quote that is attributed to her. I attribute my success to this. I never gave or took any excuse. So there's a little bit of a paragraph here. The first and last paragraphs are basically the same, but I will read it all the way through anyway. Barbie recognizes all female role models. The Inspiring Women series plays tribute to incredible heroines of their time, courageous women who took risks, changed rules, and paved the way for generations of girls to dream bigger than ever before. And certainly Florence Nightingale did that. She took a lot of risks working in a hospital. When she started working in the hospital system in the 1850s, they were unhygienic, not at all sanitary. Diseases traveled from patient to patient, from provider to provider. It was very dangerous to work in a hospital, and certainly women were not supposed to be there. Hospitals were not a place for women. The science behind proper medicine was considered above their intellect. And the actual nitty gritty of taking care of patients and seeing people uh, who were poor, who were disabled, that was not something a proper woman did. But because of Florence Nightingale, that is exactly what it became. It became a place for women to study the sciences. It was for roughly 100 years from the time she started studying again in 1850. It really was the place for a good 100 years where women could be in the medical field and be respected for it. Yes, there were women doctors even in the 1860s and 70s, but that was rare. Being a nurse was the avenue into having a stable career and a pension, and again, to study the sciences. Florence Nightingale pursued a career in nursing, a vocation she believed was her moral duty. I'm glad that they used the word vocation because when you're doing work in the medical sciences or even education, it's not just a job. You're doing it because you want to make the world a better place. So it is a vocation and it is a moral duty. Enrolling as a nursing student in 1850, Florence made it her mission to improve hospital efficiency and standards in patient care. I mean, they were at 1850, they were just coming up to the notion that, gee, maybe you should wash your hands between seeing patients. She took it a lot further than that. Carrying a lamp during her rounds in the Crimea War, Florence earned the title of the Lady with the Lamp, providing comfort and compassion to gravely wounded soldiers. To make a very, very long story short, the Crimea War was the 1800s version of the war to end all wars. It was pretty nasty. And when we're talking about gravely wounded soldiers, this is a time where soldiers were not dying necessarily from their injuries, but were dying from infection, or they were dying from dysentery and other really bad stomach trouble like that. She herself was eventually bedridden with a chronic illness, but Nightingale refused to give up and used her training as a statistician to write books that launched reforms in healthcare. It's important to say that she really worked very hard to bring both elements of the sciences into the practicing of nursing, not just the physical, the practicum of treating patients, giving them medicine, tending to their wounds, that sort of thing. But she also was very big on the record keeping, looking for patterns. Oh, people who were at this hotel, they all got the same disease. Why did this happen? Was it because of the hotel or was it because of something else? That's the kind of work she did. And that work is just as valid now in 2020 as we're talking about doing contact tracing for COVID-19. So a lot of that idea of keeping statistics, which is now routine, she put to the forefront. In 1860, she established the Nightingale Training School, continuing to further nursing education while changing the negative attitudes towards women entering the field. Throughout her life, Florence Nightingale continued to use her drive and intellect to become a pioneer in modern nursing. Girls need more role models like Florence Nightingale because imagining they can be anything is just the beginning. Actually seeing it makes all the difference. Now, to be fair, I mean, we're not really seeing what Florence Nightingale did. If I can just now bring the doll down. Um, stay, stay. Good doll. I mean, this outfit is pretty immaculate, and if you've ever really worked in a hospital, you know that they constantly have to change their scrubs because germs happen. But in terms of the period of the 1850s, obviously she's not going to wear one of those elaborate gowns that you see in period movies from the Victorian era. It's going to be much simpler. Yes, there are some very nice feminine touches. There's lace at the collar. She's got a brooch around her neck, obviously sewn on, not removable, not transferable. Her cuff, there's, by the way, her arm, does it bend? Yes, here we go. Her, she does have, I'm not entirely sure, by the way, that when she was actually practicing, she would have this kind of detailing of the cuff. Collars and cuffs were easily removable anyway from dresses like this. You would have the base dress, and then you would change it up by changing up the collars and cuffs. And obviously, I think the cuffs would come off anyway, um, just for hygienic reasons. She's wearing a sash that announces that she's connected to Scutari Hospital. I have no idea if I'm pronouncing that correctly. The gray color is a typical color that you would see for the era, so that's period correct. It's also period correct in her footwear. Obviously, you're not going to have all the buttons that you would really have on a boot like this, but yes, it would be buttoned. And yes, there would be some kind of stitch detailing where the anklet meets the shoe itself. But all of this is just plastic molded on. It's not, there's no buttons here. And as a matter of fact, in keeping with this being on the lower end of the Barbie collector scale, they split the boots in the back for easy on, easy off. And just to very quickly show you here too, the dress is going to close with Velcro. The apron is a real tie though, but the dress is Velcro. The real Florence Nightingale, and even women working, would have a petticoat of some kind underneath. This is just some weird nylon that falls very awkwardly underneath, and they didn't even give her a pair of panties. The knees bend, the arms bend, but this is not a made-to-move body. So she has some posability, but in terms of what she would have as accessories, they gave her one, which we will talk about in a second, but I just want to very quickly, while we're here, point out that the capulet is right. It's not really a cap. It's not really a cap or a hat. It's like a capulet. A lot of product in her hair. I would not recommend washing it out. I'm not sure what you would get with it. Though the face sculpt is actually kind of nice. It is a nice face sculpt for a Barbie. It's not overly like uh, it does have that serenity that you saw in the picture of her. And it is a fairly, in terms of finding a Barbie sculpt, they did find a nice one to match up with her. So, yeah, let me see, is this going to stay? She's going to, to be honest with you guys, I'm using the Fashion Royalty stand for all of these reviews because the Barbie stands that came with these were not spectacular. And I'm not in love with that stand. Not that this one is doing us much good either, but hey. Anyway, let me get her back on. There we go. The one accessory she does come with, even though a nurse would not have a stethoscope, they might be expected to have a bag of medication with them, but instead they gave her the lamp. Obviously, in the 1850s, we're not talking a flashlight. We are talking a lamp that would presumably have some kind of either kerosene inside that you would light. You would unscrew the top and light it, or a candle or something. It does have an open bottom, so if you wanted to be particularly creative and put a candle in there, I guess you kind of could have. But what I like about it is detailed to look like it has been used and it's beginning to have the stains of kerosene on it. And that's pretty much it for this review of Florence Nightingale. There isn't too much more I can say about her because there isn't a lot of playability here. If you want a period costume that isn't, you know, grand ball, grand tour, Victorian era, this is a very good simple dress to start with. And the apron is just fine too. And obviously an apron is an apron is an apron, and you can just use that wherever. But I would say that the big bonus of this is her face. If you wanted to have a doll, a Barbie doll, with a really nice head sculpt, and you want to take the chance with changing up her hair, and you have the patience to take the hat off and unsew it from her head, it's not a bad face sculpt. Even her eyes are really nice. They're nice gray eyes. So if you want to her face sculpt is basically the reason to get this. If you want to teach your daughters about Florence Nightingale, give them a book. um, and let them go that way. So for me, Barbara, and for Florence Nightingale, I will see you in my next review, which is going to be of the Lady of Song, Miss Ella Fitzgerald. Take care. Bye bye.